It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I'll be your host this morning, and I'm back from a couple of days of much-needed rest and relaxation. For those of you that aren't aware, I was out for a few days, some kind of a stomach bug or something, but back in full form and ready to tackle the issues. And boy, do we have issues. I mean, my goodness, folks, it's just utterly and totally amazing to me where we stand right now and what's going on around us every day, everywhere. If you're not cognizant of it, if you haven't become aware of the danger that our republic is in, I don't know what else to suggest to you. I mean, we are in big trouble, folk. And the issues are just, I mean, they're coming at us so fast and furious at this point, no pun intended, that we are having a hard time just keeping up with all of the information that's out there. I would like to invite you to participate with us. There's a couple of different ways that you can do that before we get started. We're going to talk about 4 topics this morning. 1, illegal immigration and the national and constitutional crisis that it's creating. 2, the shooters that ambushed the police in Nevada and how they're going to use that as an excuse to demonize patriots. 3, the Verizon and VodaPhone connection to the NSA and the spying, which means that, by the way, if you're a Verizon user, your personal tracking device has been spilling and ratting on you. And 4, the Bergdahl Gitmo release and its implications as we move forward. Now, there's a couple of different ways that you can keep track of what's going on with our program here. If you're brand new to it, that's great. I'm grateful to have you on board. You can catch the show live on our website every morning in both video and audio. The video can be found by going to our website at americasvoicenow.org. And on there, you'll see a screen where at 8 o'clock in the morning, you can click the play button. And every in between each segment, we pause the show briefly so that we can break the show into 4 segments for recording. So just give it a minute or two and then hit the play button again, and you can catch the next segment. You can also find the program live on Patriot FB. Patriot FB is stands F like Foxtrot or Bravo. You can join that website there, which is essentially like a Facebook type service, but it's all patriots. There's no trolls on there. There's no crying, whining progressive liberals screaming bloody murder about the fact that you posted something positive about guns or your right of free speech or what have you. In addition to that, you can also find our program broadcast live on constitutionclub.ning.com. Now, these are both of these are excellent websites, and I strongly encourage you to get on board with these sites because they will give you an opportunity to participate with other like-minded individuals and not have to deal with, some of the... It's a short-circuit, quick way to get to other folks that are of like mind to you. Constitutionclub.ning.com, as an example, has a website for every county in the nation. There's about 3,300 of them. And so they've got a little microsite for every county in the nation. And you can simply visit that website, click on your county, and find out who else in the country may be a patriot like you, and then communicate with them. The neat part is that you may not have known that they even existed before you visit that site. So I encourage you to do that. In addition to that, you can also find us on Patriot Radio or patriotfbradio.com. And there, Patriot FB Radio broadcasts all day long. Right after my show, they have a couple of other programs, including Tom Lacavara's program. And then after that, J.J. McCartney All great programs. Jeff used to do the Midnight Patriot, and I think he's kind of backed off that at the moment because he's got so many other things going on. But Resurrect the Republic is on at 10, and then from 2 to 4 is J.J. McCartney. So these are all great opportunities for you to find like-minded individuals, to hear programming that is actually educational for you instead of just, nonsense. So I encourage you especially to get a hold of J.J. McCartney's show from 2 to 4 o'clock right on Patriot FB or Patriot Radio or PatriotFBRadio.com. JJ's show is great. And he's a very, very, he's a true radio professional. He's been doing this program for, 30 years or something. So you won't be disappointed in J.J. McCartney. There is also ways that you can communicate with us. You can also catch our program live, and you can call in as well on your telephone and get the program via radio, and you can, or the radio via phone. And you can do that by calling our listen line at 415-325-0725. That's 415-325-0725. Now, you can call that phone number anytime you want, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and get a personal, play for whatever the previous show that was recorded was. In addition to that, you can call our listen line or our dial-in line and participate here in the show. And I'd love to hear from our callers and our listeners. You can call us at 573-453-5505. That's 573-453-5505. Now, you're welcome to call in at any point during the course of the program, and we'll try to get you on the air and make sure that you have an opportunity to be heard. The program, we recently added this phone service or phone system to the program, and we want to make sure that we have an opportunity to use it to its highest and best use. So you can participate by calling, and we'll bring you on the air. 573-453-5505. All right, so let's jump into our first topic this morning, because I got to tell you guys, what's happening around us here, especially with this illegal immigration thing, we are being inundated underneath the weight of this. And even some of the president's most staunch supporters are at this point beginning to recognize the danger of where the president has taken us with this unilateral law-breaking and lawlessness of demanding and enforcing illegal immigration, irrespective of the desires of the people and or Congress. Now, I'm not saying Congress is our savior here by any means, so don't misunderstand me, because these guys have betrayed us a long, long time ago. Now, of course, they're trying to catch the tiger by the tail that they've allowed to get out of the cage. Some of them. Some of them are actually cheering the tiger on. So, let's understand from whence these people come. But the truth is that what we've got at this stage in the game is a complete level of absolute abdication of responsibility, authority, and oath on the behalf of the national government, and they are working actively to drive the nation to ruin. In fact, there's an article out there this morning, which I posted up on our Facebook page at facebook.com/America's Voice Now, where the New York Post has put an article out called "Obama is Driving the Country to Ruin." And I got to tell you guys, he's right on. He's, when this nation finally recognizes what this president has been doing with malice aforethought and an intent, and that's the key criteria here, it may be too late for us to reverse the damage. That's the problem. And ladies and gentlemen, I cannot encourage you enough to get off your couch, pick up your phone, speak out at your churches, your schools, your job, because our nation is dying. And it is dying right before our very eyes. The time is already well past where we should have been taking control of this situation and taking our nation back from tyrants and tyranny. Listen, folks, we are at the cusp of a complete and utter totalitarian breakdown. In the New York Post, Michael Goodwin writes out there, if you think the United States of America as a store, and its recent decisions and scandals resemble a sale, perhaps a fire sale, or maybe even a going out of business sale, you'd be right. The list of dramatic markdowns is breathtaking. Trading away 5 murderous terrorists for a likely army deserter, an open invitation to tens of thousands of illegal immigrants to cross the Mexican border, and a decision to recognize the terrorist group Hamas as part of the Palestinian government. On the home front, environmental regulations will cost thousands of coal miners their jobs and drive up the cost of electricity for millions. The Obamacare mess is hardly resolved, and the VA scandal keeps getting worse. The acting agency head reports the deaths of 18 more vets who were kept off the waiting list in Phoenix. Ticking quietly in the background is the mother of all threats, an Iranian nuclear bomb. That ticking grew louder last week as the Ayatollah mocked our nation by standing in front of a banner that proclaimed, "America cannot do a damn thing." Quote, that was what was printed across a banner behind the Ayatollah. America cannot do a damn thing. Technically, he's wrong. It's not that we can't stop the Mad Mullah's march. It's that President Obama has taken the military option off the table. And without it, Iran has nothing to fear. Our impotence is a choice. By the way, you can't limit it just to that. We've still got the NSA spying on American citizens out there. We've still got the issue of the IRS out there seeking as a weapon of mass destruction patriots across the country and organizations. This is an ideological war, folks. And I got to tell you, it's greater than just a war against, people and ideologies. This is a war that is a war of greater magnitude than that. This is a war of good and evil. And I have to tell you, we're losing it. And we're losing it because too many people are willing to sit around and act as if, hey, posting something or liking something on Facebook is enough. They think that's fighting. Mentioning it in a crowd of friends and saying, shaking their head and saying, yeah, that's just not right that we gave up those 5 terrorists for that. That's not fighting. It's not fighting. If you think that's being a warrior for liberty and freedom, look back at our ancestors and ask yourself, is that how these men dealt with treason and tyranny and totalitarianism? The truth of the matter is, folks, we are, and the GOP has taken impeachment completely off the table. So we're standing here with a president who is driving the car downhill at an astounding rate with his foot floored to the gas pedal. The brakes don't work. Everyone is handcuffed in the back of the car, and we're all in for the ride. And we have absolutely no control over what's going on. He's laughing like a maniacal, mental patient up there, while he steers the car back and forth, bouncing off the barriers. He's flaunting his insanity in our face. See, from his perspective, it's not insanity. From his perspective, he's achieving the goal. From your perspective, from my perspective, there's something wrong with the whole picture. But for a guy who's intent on committing suicide with all of us as a nation in tow, and I don't mean physical suicide, although that too, but I mean the man is committing suicide on a national basis. The problem is that he's like a cruise ship captain who heads straight for the iceberg. He knows that it's going to kill him, and he doesn't care about all the passengers on board. I got to tell you, folks, we're in big trouble. And I don't know that we actually can even unwind at this point. I posted an article the other day from Phyllis Schlafly about immigration. And she put out an article entitled "The Racket of Guest Workers." I encourage you to go find it. It's on our Facebook page. It's on our website at americasvoicenow.org. And here's basically what she was saying. That, Tom Donahue, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce president, he hurled out that challenge to Republicans that if they don't pass the amnesty for illegal aliens, they shouldn't bother to run a candidate in 2016. I explained to you a while ago, but Phyllis confirms it here, that the real issue here is not, most Americans don't want this kind of immigration amnesty. I mean, there's a small minority of these, tree-hugging, crybabies who say, oh, we have to let everybody in irrespective. And nobody wants to tear families apart and cause, injury to people. But we do have an obligation to ourselves first and foremost. Look, we cannot sit here and say we're going to starve our own children to death while we feed strangers. That's not how it works, folks. It's never worked that way. It's never going to work that way. And the truth is, this is nothing more, this entire illegal immigration issue is nothing more than a racket of the transnational and multinational corporations who are trying to do nothing more than lower the bar for their pay scales. That's all this is about. And make indentured servants out of these immigrants who come across because they hold their green card in the palm of their hand. Argue about your wages, argue about your working conditions. We'll just send you back across the border. We'll fire you. And when we fire you and you have no work, boom, you got to go. And they get it. They can't say that to you, an American who went through college and is now sitting there on between $50,000 and $250,000 worth of college costs and loans. So they don't have the luxury of holding a gun to your head. They do have that luxury with indentured servants, and that's the goal. That's why they're not hiring an American. They want H-1B visa and immigrant workers, and they want them for a clear and specific reason. They're easily intimidated, they're easily manipulated, and they can be forced to do slave labor, essentially, for lower wages, and they don't have a choice in the matter because as soon as they get accustomed and sucked into the lifestyle here, and the fact that you mean to tell me I can actually sleep in a bed all my own and I don't have to sleep with my 3 or 6 brothers and sisters? You mean to tell me I can actually use a real porcelain toilet and I don't have to go in a ditch out in the backyard? You mean to tell me that I can have electricity, that all I got to do is flick a switch and the lights come on and there's a refrigerator to keep the food cold? You mean to tell me that I can literally get down the street and buy a gallon of milk and it's only a half a block away? You mean to tell me that I can actually own a car and drive myself to work? You mean to tell me that I have the ability to flip on a television and I've got 150 channels of absolutely nonsensical garbage on there that I can watch? You mean to tell me I can have my own iPad and my own iPod and I can listen to music? You mean to tell me I can walk the streets without fear for being shot or robbed or raped? Once they get accustomed to that, ladies and gentlemen, they'll do anything to stay here. It's a self-imposed prison nonetheless, but it's still a prison. It's an indentured servitude, and that's what illegal immigration is all about. They're replacing you, and you're interviewing your own replacement. Don't you get it? You're sitting here arguing about, this nonsense about STEM workers and how we're short on STEM workers. We're not short on STEM workers. That argument has been debunked 100 times. Now, the mainstream media won't tell you. They're going to keep it from you. They don't want you to know. The science, technology, and math. Listen, let me tell you something. We have a vast treasure trove of highly educated, ready, willing, and able to work young people right here in this country that are standing there on a stack of debt. But they can't find the jobs. And meanwhile, industry is clamoring. We need more, we need more. But we want the right kind. We want the kind that we can stand there and handcuff to their cubicle. We want the kind that when they raise their head and argue about conditions or wages or the way in which we treat them or the fact that we cut their benefits. When we want to be able to shut them down, all we have to say is, well, wait a second now. Aren't we holding your work visa, your green card? Try that with an average American. They'd say, no, you're not, and I can walk out of here anytime I want. And in fact, what they may well do is go and find another job and then do exactly that. But when you're an immigrant worker, you don't have that luxury. And they know it. And if you don't think that this will pull down global wages or I shouldn't say global, I mean on a global scale. The wages in the United States for science, technology, and the STEM jobs, you're dreaming. You're dreaming. And it will invariably over a period of time. That's what this is about. Not to mention the fact that while they're at it, they get a host of new voters that can keep them in power. This is a humanitarian crisis this government is creating right now. And they're doing it on purpose, and they're doing it with malice aforethought. They couldn't care less about these people and their families. And then you got the likes of Eric Cantor, who just finished scrubbing his website of his illegal immigration amnesty-approved stance because he's got an election coming up in November. I mean, what a traitor this guy is. And now he comes out and says he wants to create a youth amnesty deal with Obama. Go look it up. It's on the Daily Caller. Go look at our website, americasvoicenow.org, or our Facebook page, facebook.com/America's Voice Now, or go to patriotfb.com, where I've posted all this stuff up. You don't have to take it from me. In fact, I don't want you to take it from me. I give you these articles because I'm expecting you to be a critically thinking adult, to go out there and use what you hear here only as a means to say, aha, I've got a starting point. Do your own due diligence, your own homework, your own investigation. Identify the problem. Formulate and create an opinion that belongs to you and you exclusively based on the information which you've been able to gather. Now that you have enough informed information to make an informed decision, you can actually carry your own opinion instead of parroting somebody else's that you heard on news or on some blog. That's the secret. They've been trying to keep you from being a critical thinker. And they're pounding you with so much information now, it's very, very hard to learn to be a critical thinker in times like these because it's coming at you in a fire hose. And your job out of all of that water is to find the one drop. The one drop that matters. Eric Cantor, the majority leader, I mean, unbelievable. I've told the president there are some things we can work on together. How can you say that when the president says, I'm determined to work outside of Congress? You don't have the authority of the American people, Mr. Cantor. You don't have our authority to work on our behalf against us. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to tackle our second topic. The shooters that ambushed the police the other day in Nevada. Folks, I got to tell you, this is going to become an issue, and they're going to use it to demonize everybody in the Patriot movement. You watch. You watch and see if this does not change everything. And I mark my words, this is going to be a major, major issue. You're listening to America's Voice Now. You can catch us live every morning from 8 to 10 a.m. or 9:45. And you can catch us live at americasvoicenow.org. You can listen to us locally on Big Country 99.3 FM, the Ozarks, South Central Ozarks radio station from midnight to 2 a.m. You can catch us on patriotfb.com. You can catch us on constitutionclub.ning.com. And you can find our website at americasvoicenow.org. We'll be back in just a minute. America's Voice Now. My name is Mike Evans. I'll be your host here this morning, and I apologize to those of you who are just jumping on this morning with us. I've been off for a couple of days. I was down and out with a stomach bug of some sort. Hey, just a quick note, and this is not on politics, which, usually that's my sticking point, but I posted an article up on our Facebook page this morning that says fasting for 3 days can regenerate, reset, and kickstart your entire immune system. This is a new study, which, it's kind of ironic that, it's a study being done in 2014 about something which was talked about as far back as 2,000 years ago when the Bible was written, and they talked about fasting on a routine basis, right? And if you're a believer, you'll note that the Bible taught you to fast as a time-honored practice for both practical and physical as well as spiritual reasons. But here's an interesting point. This is especially valuable if you've been ill, if you are a person who has a compromised immune system, either because you're on a series of drugs, or maybe you've come off of a run of some kind of drug for an illness that you had, or even if you're a person who just works excessively and you beat yourself down physically, right? Which is most of us these days. I mean, we're all just trying to keep our heads above water. Anyway, the argument here is that by kickstarting your jumpstarting your immune system, you can do that by a 3-day fast. And what happens is it forces your body to collect all of the dead or the bad cells that are your body already knows are bad, right? In other words, they already know that these cells are negative, and it expels them. And in the meantime, it reignites the white cell blood count that is what creates your immune system. And it's like a flush of your system, and it's actually very, very beneficial for you. Now, of course, there's a couple of points in there that say, we recommend you don't do this without a doctor, and we recommend subsidizing it with drugs. Well, of course they recommend subsidizing it with drugs. How else are the pharma tyrants supposed to stay in business? But the point is this. You don't need anybody else to... And by the way, the argument of taking a 3-day fast is a completely legitimate one, and there's absolutely no reason why it would endanger you unless you're already emaciated to the point of, starvation. I mean, people have been fasting, folks, for thousands and thousands of years, willfully and otherwise. Taking a 3-day break and drinking nothing but water, and the way to do that is you should drink at least a gallon of water. You have to have water. So you should be making a gallon of water with some lemon juice and honey in it, and literally taking that down during the course of the day. The only other thing that you might consider is that psyllium fiber, which will help to keep your system flushed out, because if you don't eat for 3 days, you're not going to go to the bathroom properly, and that's help to flush those cells out, and it helps to lower your cholesterol too, because it sucks up all that cholesterol. It forms gel in your colon, and it blows all that nonsense out. So that would be my only other suggestion, is you might combine that with psyllium fiber, which you can get down at the local store. It's cheap, 1 tablespoon or 2 tablespoons of it a day. That and straight water with lemon and honey, okay? Give it a shot. You can put some salt in there too if you want, for either taste and or to keep your body hydrated, especially during the summertime. And if it's real hot or real dry where you are, then make sure that you do a little extra hydration. Hydration is very important, especially if you're fasting. But fasting is a great way to reignite and kickstart your entire immune system. Give it a shot. All right. Our shooters and the ambush on these police. That's what we're going to talk about in this topic. And the reason we're going to is because, what's going to happen now, and you're going to see the beginnings of this. This happened yesterday. Apparently, these 2 people walked into a restaurant where there were 2 police officers sitting there having lunch. And it was a female and a male. They walked in. One of the officers was apparently up getting himself a refill at the soda machine, and the female walked up and literally shot him right there standing at the machine, and he was killed instantly. The other guy screamed, "This is the beginning of the revolution," and he began firing on the other officer who was apparently seated at the table. At least this is what we know. And, of course, this only happened yesterday, so it's all sketchy. They then took their weapons and apparently laid a Gadsden flag out over the body, or one of the bodies, and said, "This is the beginning of the revolution," and stormed out of the store. They then walked across the street to a Walmart where apparently someone in that Walmart, who might have been a concealed carry holder, apparently tried to well, I'm not quite sure, and I don't think anybody really knows at this point, but evidently they shot this other individual and killed that person as well. Then there's been some stories about whether or not they were engaged in another firefight with police or whether they shot themselves and what transpired. But apparently the female shot the guy and then killed herself. And they had been wounded in some way, shape, or form. What's going to happen here, and you can already hear it because they're already talking about how the Gadsden flag is the symbol of the Tea Party, and that this guy was a militant, and he talked about conspiracy theories, that he, lived in this complex, and that because of this Revolutionary War era, Gadsden flag, for the record, is the one with the coiled snake on it, says, "Don't tread on me." So here's what you're going to see, folks. Now, this in combination with the brand new announcement that Eric Holder is revitalizing the Thought Police program against domestic terrorism here in the United States and racial terrorism that doesn't exist. I mean, talk about creating a problem that doesn't exist, right? Only Eric Holder, the guy who has no justification for his existence in his job, would be the one, to kick this one off. But he's resurrecting his thought crime program. And they're going to use this incident, I guarantee you, as another or the next chapter in how to terrorize and demonize the American population. This program was killed after 2001, and it was started after the 1995 Oklahoma City bombing, and it was scrapped after the terrorist attacks of 9/11 because the argument was, hey, that's really not as great a risk as all of these external threats from, the extremists, religious extremists around the world. So we're going to focus on the Muslims instead. Now, Eric Holder's brought it back, but he's basically saying we have to be concerned with the continued danger we face from individuals within our own borders who may be motivated by a variety of other causes, from anti-government animus to racial prejudice. What? Let me tell you something. Eric Holder, there is no racial prejudice that is causing a problem here in this country. You don't have people running around lynching anybody. You haven't seen a mass storming of whites killing blacks. In fact, all the murder of blacks is black on black. 90% of it. That's not a racial issue. That's a drug war issue that you guys have created. The ACLU is coming out against this, and rightly so, because they're calling this a sweeping mandate to monitor and collect controversial speech. Now, conservative groups, and rightly so, are alarmed, and we should be, and I'll tell you why. First, we are once again seeing ourselves as with a bullseye painted on us by this administration. I mean, we still haven't gotten to the bottom of the IRS and using them as a weapon of mass destruction, a cruise missile per se, being targeted at conservatives and patriot groups who are only seeking the restoration of the rule of law within our nation, ending the lawlessness that is surrounding us by Congress, by the president, by the judiciary. Everybody's out of control. Horace Cooper, the co-chairman of the Project 21 National Advisory Board, and this is a network of black conservatives. Here's what he says. It appears there's an attempt to marginalize people who hold views that are sharply different from those of the administration and much of the establishment. He says that there are plenty of presidents dealt with critical speech, particularly when it came to things like opposition against the Vietnamese War and even the Iraq War. But no president has ever responded like this. Now, I would disagree with him there. I would say to you that John Adams did when he instituted what? The Sedition Act. And ladies and gentlemen, that's exactly what they're driving for. I posted articles the other day about how Chuck Schumer and Feinstein are trying to rewrite the First Amendment along with Dirty Harry Reid. They're trying to rewrite the First Amendment to limit people like me from being able to speak out about the truth. They're also trying to keep people from participating financially unless they're the right kind of people in political elections. Now, frankly, I'd have no problem if no one, no corporation, and none of these large 501c(x) groups were allowed to participate in political games. That shouldn't be at all. In fact, if you want to get the dirty money out of politics, simply pass a law that says every person can donate only $2,000. End of argument. If you're not a human being, if you don't physically have a corporeal body, that's it. You're done. Corporations don't have First Amendment rights because corporations can't go to jail. When you can show me how you can put a piece of paper in a prison, then and only then will First Amendment rights be applied to corporations. Lobbyists are outlawed with a prison term of life for getting caught for bribery of a politician. That's what it is. That's all it is. And that's what they seek to allow while silencing you. Now, back to Cooper. He says that, presidents have dealt with this before, but no president ever responded like this. I disagree. Madison passed the Sedition Act, which threw people in jail just for saying Madison was Adams. Adams passed the Sedition Act. I mean, this is right after the passage of the original Constitution and the Bill of Rights. I mean, the guy hardly waited till the ink was dry. And Adams was one of the founding fathers, but he got corrupted as soon as he got in the seat of power. And he passed the Sedition Act, which Madison and Jefferson turned around and said, oh no. You can't throw people in jail, and Adams did, for just speaking out against the administration and saying things that, like, the president was a tyrant. And he was. He was acting tyrannical, throwing people in jail for calling him a tyrant. That's essentially where they're at again. This is thought police, but on a scale and a massive capability that they never had before. Because now they've got your phone calls and your email and your metadata and your communications. They've got your tax records, your job records, your travel records. They've got everything about you. Cooper says, quote, this is, again, Cooper, for the record, Horace Cooper is the co-chairman of Project 21 National Advisory Board, a network of black conservatives. Okay? So he's in the minority right off the bat because he's a conservative and he's a black man. And you know how the rest of the progressive world, black and white, treats this group of conservative blacks. They're intimidating other blacks not to be conservative. I mean, we just had a sitting senator, call a Supreme Court justice an Uncle Tom. Both of them were black men because he didn't like the way he ruled on a case. If that's not intimidation, ladies and gentlemen, from a sitting U.S. senator, I don't know what is. And I apologize. He wasn't a senator. He was a House rep. Quote, you didn't arrest them due to their speech. We didn't try to prevent them from being able to express themselves on campuses. And we didn't try to prevent them from trying to enter into the public square. This administration appears not to appreciate that lesson and says that the groups of people that are not within their particular perspective ought to be considered the very threat that the real terrorist threat that comes internationally presents. In other words, he's saying we're separating ourselves now from the international threat, and we're turning our view from outward to inward. Now, his group, Project 21, is a very vocal critic of this administration and their efforts to cloak their liberal policies in the guise of racial equality. And I got to tell you, he strikes the nails on the head, so I'm going to finish reading this for you. Cooper says devoting resources to stop the threats based on racial prejudice is a solution in search of a problem. And ladies and gentlemen, we are inundated up to our necks with that kind of nonsense. Quote, we are particularly bothered by mixing together so-called domestic insurrectionists and racists. There is simply no anti-black or anti-minority underground movement in America that is threatening in any way the stability of our government or the stability of local governments. There is just nothing like that. That's just a complete and total boogeyman, said Cooper. He believes that the Justice Department is fully aware of the reality of that, however, and is utilizing what? The phantom menace theory, which is a standard tactic of fascists and totalitarians. Cooper went on to state that Holder could solve this debate by compelling a report to show the real number of racially motivated murder, kidnaps, and bombings. He said the report will never come out because he believes that the real motivation for the committee is it's not truth. It's all about political fantasy. Quote, in our organization's view, this is done, particularly the racial component, to create the false impression to minority communities that it is the Obama administration that is here to help them, meaning the minority communities. And another reason why, with all of the economic failings that they have provided to Americans generally, and minorities in particular, that they should continue to consider giving away their vote to this particular administration. And you couldn't have hit the nail squarer on the head than Cooper just did with that statement. You see, what they're doing is manufacturing a monster, a boogeyman under the bed, a monster in the closet. And they're going to the minority community and they're saying, look, this is a real threat to you. Now, the truth is, they then couch themselves as the knight in shining armor, or the guy in the white hat on the white horse with the white coat, and sitting there saying, look, we're here to save you. And if it wasn't for us, you guys would be being lynched in trees every weekend. Come on, America. How stupid are you going to be to fall for that kind of nonsensical crap? When was the last lynching in the United States of America? Come on. Give me one. You can't. I'm not saying racism doesn't exist. I'm saying it doesn't exist on a wholesale scale and a level like they're trying to portray it. And this Eric Holder is going to use this to demonize the Patriot movement. It has absolutely nothing to do with race. Now look, what you're going to see here is the initiation of terrorism, government-sponsored terrorism on American citizens, because they're going to use this shooting that happened in Vegas as the impetus to get out there and begin to terrorize anyone of the patriot mind, anyone of the conservative viewpoint, anyone who says there's police brutality going on right over there. Meanwhile, you got a cop beating a guy with a billy stick, and everybody's saying, no, there's not, no, there's not, no, there's not, no, there's not, no, there's not. I don't know what they're talking about. I'm going to just whistle past this graveyard and nobody will notice me. That's the whole idea, ladies and gentlemen, to silence you, to intimidate you into silence. I don't want them coming after me after they get done beating that guy. They're already trying to tie this dude to the Bundy Ranch thing. Turns out, apparently, at least according to one article, he was tossed out of the Bundy Ranch group because they thought he was too dangerous. And whether or not that's true, I don't know. But you can bet we're going to see a ton of media coverage on this. I mean, if all of these so-called alleged investigative reporters were so active, why can't they find out what's going on with the NSA and the IRS and the Fast and Furious and the VA scandal? But you can bet that they will have down the color of the underwear these people wore and the stripes that they prefer on their socks by, Wednesday. Today's Monday. They're already saying, this was a war zone. I don't know what happened. And I'm not condoning that people walk in there and start shooting police. We're not murderers. What we are people who choose to live in a fiscally and spiritually and politically conservative viewpoint. We don't betray our own. We don't get out there and spend more than we have. We don't turn ourselves and each other against one another in an attempt to accommodate some ideologically perverse theory and agenda. We don't seek to marginalize one another for our own improvement and gain. We don't seek to enslave ourselves under debt so that some small oligarchy at the top can run everything. I don't buy it. I don't believe it. I'm never gonna. There ain't nothing you can do to make me. I know, you've got a seat in an indoctrination camp waiting for me. I get it. Don't tell me that that's not a real legitimate fear, folks. It is. It won't be long before they're kicking in the doors of Americans around the country. You watch. And I want you to mark my words on this, because when it happens, we're at the stage, folks, where there's no going back now. And that's the simple truth. How do I know that? Well, we're going to talk about this in the next segment when we talk about this Verizon and VodaPhone connection that the media has been keeping silent from you. But the truth is, not only has VodaPhone been, cooperating and participating in giving secret cable drops to tap phones to the NSA, but Vodafone owns 45% of Verizon. So what you're going to find out is that anybody in the United States who is on Verizon is nailed. Now, by the way, for the record, I'm going to prove to you what the conspiracy looks like from the other side of the fence, because the U.S. Marshals just seized state records from a police department that proved that they were using one of these Stingray devices. And the ACLU got a court order saying you got to release those records to us under a sunshine law, and the federal marshals came down and took the records before the police department could follow the judge's order. Folks, if you don't see tyranny written all over that, I don't know. What have they got to hide from you? All right, we're going to take a break. There's two things I want you to do today. One, if you're a person who's been looking for a job and you're having a hard time, there's an opportunity for you to visit a website where AmericanResumeService.com has offered to not only help you create and rebuild your resume and or create one if you don't have one at all, especially if you're fresh out of school and you've got limited opportunity to have built an experience platform to build a resume on. Let these guys work with you. They specialize, by the way, also in military and government resumes. So if you're leaving the military and you're trying to figure out how to best couch yourself for a job, here's how you do it. You go to AmericanResumeService.com. They have 20,000 employed happy clients that have dealt with them over the past 25 years. And they will help you to create and or redevelop your resume. It never hurts to freshen it up. And the rules for resumes change all the time. So that stodgy thing that you've been collecting dust for the last 15 years, you can't just update it with one or two lines and expect that it's going to get you the dream job you're looking for, or any job for that matter. Go to AmericanResumeService.com, or you can call them at 417-264-2486. Now, in addition to that, you can get in my email at info@AmericanResumeService.com. Here's the great part. They've got a $200 resume package, but they're going to actually, for America's Voice Now listeners, cut that to $100 and then donate the whole $100 to this program to keep it on the air. So you're getting a whole bunch of bennies out of that. One, you're supporting this program. Two, you're getting a resume rebuilt and redesigned by some of the best resume builders in the business. And three, they are like-minded to you. I mean, folks, you can't beat it. Make sure that you visit them at AmericanResumeService.com, 417-264-2486, or info@AmericanResumeService.com. Make sure that you visit our friends over at Battery Station. You can find my buddy Kevin at BatteryStation.com. An unbelievable selection of flashlights and electronics and batteries and similarly run products. By the way, it's got batteries for everything. It doesn't make any difference whether it's a lead-acid battery or one of those mercury batteries or a lithium battery or whatever. He's got them all. He ships nationwide. He's got great prices. And in addition to that, he carries a ton of other product, including a lot of stuff for the self-reliance and self-sufficiency movement. If you're a prepper, he's got ammunition down there. He's got freeze-dried food and things down there. He's got all kinds of stuff for camping and bug-out bags and the like. Make sure that you find them at batterystation.com. We'll be right back.
It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice right here, right now. You're joining us in our third segment this morning. We generally break our program into 4 segments, and you're joining us halfway through the program. Glad to have you on board. In this particular segment, we're going to talk about Verizon and VodaPhone and their connection to the NSA spying. And if you'd like to participate in the program, you can certainly give us a call. You can call us at 573-453-5505. We'll bring you on the air, and you can make your voice heard. You'll have to, you just have to give us a shout and let me bring you on board. Again, the phone number is 573-453-5505. Now, what's happening here with this VodaPhone thing is that they have come out and stated that government agencies have been utilizing their cable connections to tap into phone conversations live and even track the locations of citizens, all without warrants, using secret cables that they've connected directly to the network equipment of VodaPhone. Now, this is an article that came out in the Telegraph, and you say, well, why does this matter in the United States? VodaPhone is a British company. Stop right there. VodaPhone owned, until a month and a half or 2 months ago, 45% of Verizon. Hello. Now, VodaPhone came out and said that this wasn't just in only Britain. This was in all 26 countries that they operate in. Hello? What does that tell you, folks? They say that secret wires have been connected to their network and those belonging to their competitors, giving government agencies the ability to tap into phone and broadband traffic. That includes your internet traffic. In many countries, this is mandatory for all telecom companies, and today they published the first law enforcement disclosure report. Now, you can find this article on telegraph.co.uk, and I encourage you, find it on our website. It's on our website at americasvoicenow.org. It's on our Facebook page at facebook.com/americasvoicenow, and you can also find it on patriotfb.com. This law enforcement disclosure report basically states that it describes exactly how the governments that it deals with in its 26 nations where it's offering service are eavesdropping on the citizens within those nations. It's calling for an end to the use of these direct access eavesdropping cables that are ported straight into the back of these network switches. And they're calling for transparency on the number of warrants that are issued to give access to private data. They operate, and I apologize, it's not 26, it's 29 countries, including the United States of America. I've never heard of VodaPhone here in the United States, you say. Oh, I know you haven't. You know why? Because they own 45% of Verizon. Hello? Now, Verizon just announced 2 months ago, I think it was, or 3 months ago, that they were buying out VodaPhone out of their 45% share. In other words, they were going to, buy VodaPhone off, let VodaPhone go, and become an independent, wholly owned subsidiary of Bell Atlantic Corporation or Verizon Corporation, right? I know this stuff because I used to work at Verizon and Bell Atlantic before it was Verizon and Bell Atlantic Mobile before. So the point is simply this. VodaPhone owned 45% of Verizon Wireless up until a couple of months ago. So, and I can tell you, and I've already told you in the past, as a result of my time in the wireless business, that back in the early 90s, they passed something called CALEA. It was actually the late 90s, but it was called CALEA. CALEA stands for Communications and Law Enforcement Act. Communications Assistance Law Enforcement Act. I apologize. Now, essentially what that did is, at the time, law enforcement was furious about the fact that they could tap into landline phones, but they couldn't tap into wireless calls. Now, if you recall, and you were around in the late 90s when, mobile phones were just beginning to really kind of take off and the pricing was getting down to the point where average people could afford them, they recognized that there was this problem. These phones roamed all over the place, and so because they were portable and mobile, it was almost impossible to tap one. And so what they did is they passed this law called CALEA, Communications and Law Enforcement Assistance Act. And basically what it said is that every cellular telephone company, every wireless company, had to provide a big, gigantic plug into the back end of their switch. And in that plug went a law enforcement connection so that they could tap into not only... See, they couldn't tap into the air link between the phone and the cell tower. That was too much trouble and it was too hard. And it only let them hear one side of the conversation. So by tapping into the back of the switch, they were able to capture the entire conversation, and it didn't matter whether you were traveling locally or whether you were traveling, 10 states over and roaming on another carrier's network, because all the traffic still had to come back, at least for billing purposes. Now, they've gotten even more advanced because essentially by now having these fully nationalized networks that they have with like Verizon and AT&T and such like that, they have the ability when they tap in to even capture the roaming aspect. So, I mean, let's say you live in New York, but you're traveling in San Francisco, right? Well, the same carrier that you have in New York and San Francisco is in many cases going to be the same carrier you have in San Francisco. So by tapping into the switch, they get all of the conversation. They also get, of course, all of your GPS data, because every phone that's out there produced right now is what? These are phones that are produced by the carriers and by the manufacturers with the GPS chip in them. And if you have not recognized and you don't understand it or believe it at this point, the fault is in your stars, because they have the wherewithal and the ability to tap this phone, and not only that, but turn it on remotely when they want to use it as a microphone device. In addition to that, the NSA or the NSA and the FBI and Vodafone, Verizon, and every other carrier, including AT&T and all the other competitors, they can all track your location by the GPS in this. And in addition to that, you've actually got police departments that are creating this fake network utilizing a cell site that actually pretends to be a cell site but really isn't. And when you drive past it, law enforcement agencies are putting this up. They get your entire contact list. They get all your texts. They get all your emails. They get all your messages. They get all the phone calls you make. For what? Where is that national security to sit there and set up one of these devices in, let's say, Pensacola, Florida, and catch every person who drives past it? How is that? I mean, what are we, all terrorists? Well, see, in their eyes, we are. And boom, there's the problem. You see, they consider you a threat, not because you actually have exhibited or given them any reason to believe that, just because you're not one of them. The truth is, this is top-down totalitarianism, and it's treason in the United States, at least, and it's tyranny globally. Vodafone Group's privacy officer, a guy by the name of Stephen Dedman, and I hate to say, I hope that's not indicative of what's going to happen to him based on the fact of his exposing this. He says, quote, "These pipes exist, and the direct access model exists. Quote, we are making a call to end direct access as a means of government agencies obtaining people's communication data. Without an official warrant, there is no external visibility. If we receive a demand, we can push back against the agency. The fact that a government has to issue a piece of paper is an important constraint on how these powers are used. We need to debate how are we balancing the need of law enforcement with the fundamental rights and freedoms of the citizens. The detail is we get a much more informed debate going, or the ideal is we get a much more informed debate going, and we do all of that without putting our colleagues in danger. Now, it was thought in the UK that a direct access pipe would be illegal. Alas, they've been using it anyway. And even where they're supposed to get warrants. Now, if you think that they're not doing that here, I've shown you time and time again, they are. And where the NSA is not doing it, because you say, well, President Obama assured us he wasn't listening in on our phone calls. That's true. He wasn't listening to every phone call because the manpower to do that would be, you'd have to have a 1-for-1 for every person out there. So what they are doing, though, is caking and capturing all that, and then they convert it from speech into text, and then they can store the text indefinitely in a compressed state in your file. And if they ever have reason to suspect you for anything, they just bring up your file and all of the texts that are right there. And all your messages, and all your emails, and all your internet searches, and. And what the NSA cannot do, because they are prohibited by law from doing, and even they are afraid to crack that yet, or they haven't just been exposed for it yet, the FBI can do, because the FBI does have domestic authority. And we already know, and I did an entire program on this going back months, we already know that the NSA and the FBI have a direct linkage pipe between the two of them. So the FBI does what the NSA can't do and then feeds it to the NSA, who utilizes their computer systems to store it and analyze it. Please don't be so naive, people. Do you know how many in the United States, how many of the FISA court requests have been turned down in the last number of, 5-7 years? I've read this report a half a dozen times, and I'm sorry, I just don't have the numbers memorized in front of me. But I can tell you this. It's been none, so it doesn't make any difference whether it was 1 or 1 million, because they've not denied a single request. It's a rubber stamp, ladies and gentlemen, when they even bother to get one. Gus Hostein, he's the executive director of Privacy International. He says, while governments have starved this debate over surveillance by saying nothing and denying everything. Wow, that's a telling statement, right? While governments have starved this debate over surveillance by saying nothing and denying everything, some companies have acted more responsibly by bringing data to the table. VodaPhone is taking a commendable step by taking this issue on at an international scale. And they are trying to identify the legal basis for government's claimed powers. Here's a corporation that's openly telling you, your governments, not only here domestically in the United States, but in Europe and Britain, and this group operates in Egypt, in India, Qatar, Romania, South Africa, Turkey. That these groups and these organizations and these governments are claiming power. They're demanding power that doesn't really exist. They've not been given any authority. They're usurping and stealing it. He goes on to say that what we are now discovering is that the picture is even more bleak than previously thought. Governments around the world are unashamedly abusing privacy by demanding access to communications and data, and alarmingly, sometimes granting themselves direct access to the networks. Now that VodaPhone has been more open, the entire industry has cover to take the necessary next steps of pushing back. Pushing back against bad requests is a start. Pushing back against bad law is the next step. It should start at home, as the UK continues to be a black mark on the global map of mass surveillance. with GCHQs tapping directly into VodaPhone cables that carry our communications across the world. The usefulness of transparency reports hinges on governments abiding by the rule of law. We now know that these reports only provide a limited picture of what's going on. How do we know that this is out of control? I'm going to show you. Did you know that the other day, and I posted this up on our Facebook page and website and blah, 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 blah. There's an article in Wired.com how the feds have seized the Stingray records and documents from Florida. U.S. Marshals seized the cops' spying records to keep them withheld from the ACLU based on a lawsuit. I mean, folks, this is open treason. Where do the federal marshals have the authority to go in there and snitch and steal records from a state, barring a court from saying, yeah, you got to turn them over? Who ever heard of such a thing? This is a constitutional crisis. The routine request in Florida for public records regarding the use of a surveillance tool known as a Stingray took an extraordinary turn recently when federal authorities seized the documents before police could release them. The surprise move by the U.S. Marshal Service stunned the American Civil Liberty Union, which earlier this year filed a public record request with the Sarasota Police Department for information detailing the use on this controversial surveillance tool. The ACLU had an appointment last Tuesday to review the documents pertaining to a case investigated by a Sarasota police detective. The marshals, the federal U.S. Marshals, swooped in at the last minute to grab and seize the records, claiming they belong to the U.S. Marshals Service and barring the police from releasing them. Why? Because their argument is the DHS and the federal government paid for the Stingray. People, don't you get it? This is so out of control. You cannot even begin to list the tyranny that's associated with this kind of an activity. And I don't care if they're doing an investigation on somebody. The truth of the matter is they're doing it and using illegal information to build a case. Look, if you're going to be Machiavellian about it and say the end justifies the means, then there is no rule of law. There's just a subjective claim of individuals who have an axe to grind, who utilize their authority and power and abuse it to do whatever it is that they want to do. You can't have it both ways, people. It can only work one way. Either we have a rule of law or we don't. Either we've got the sheriff of Nottingham who runs around doing as he pleases under the guise of some king who authorizes him to have whatever abuse of power he wants, or we don't. ACLU staff attorney Nathan Freed Wessler called the move, quote, truly extraordinary and beyond the worst transparency violations that the group has seen regarding documents detailing police use of this technology. This is consistent with what we've seen around the country, with federal agencies trying to meddle with public requests for Stingray information. He notes that the federal authorities have in other cases invoked the Homeland Security Act to prevent the release of these records. Quote, the feds are working very hard to block any release of this information to the public. You know why? Because they're spying on you. And they can't say it's national security if they're listening to Mrs. McGillicuddy from the local police department. Stingrays, also known as IMSI catchers, simulate a cell phone tower, and they trick the nearby mobile phones into connecting with them, which thereby reveals their location. A Stingray can see and record a device's unique ID number and the traffic data, as well as information that points to its location. By moving a Stingray around, authorities can triangulate a device's location with great precision, more so than is possible using data obtained from a carrier's fixed tower location. So they basically drive around with this thing. Don't you get it? And they can pinpoint your location down to, a couple of hundred yards, a couple of 100 feet. The records sought by the ACLU are important because the organization has learned that a Florida police detective obtained permission to use a stingray simply by filing an application with the court under Florida's trap and trace statute instead of obtaining a probable cause warrant. I invite you to reread the Fourth Amendment that demands that a warrant must be issued, stating explicitly what are you going to collect and from whom and where. Trap and trace orders generally are used to collect information from phone companies about telephone numbers received and called by a specific account. A stingray, however, can track the location, including inside private spaces, so they can tell you what floor you're on in the building. The government has long asserted it doesn't need a probable cause warrant to use a stingray because the device doesn't collect the content of phone calls and text messages, but instead operate like pen register and trap and trace, collecting the equivalent of all the header information, or metadata as it's called. The ACLU and others argue the devices are far more invasive than a trap and trace. Recently, a Tallahassee police department revealed that it used stingrays at least 200 times since 2010 and didn't even offer to tell a judge because the device manufacturer, wait until you hear this one, made the police department sign a non-disclosure agreement that police claim prevented them from disclosing use of the device to the court, even though the law says they have to. Ladies and gentlemen, who are we listening to? Harris Corporation, who says if you want to use this device, you've got to sign a non-disclosure that tells you you've got to violate the law, and you're going to give them absolute discretion for that? Are you flipping kidding me? In fact, Harris Corporation ought to be under federal criminal indictment right now. And the president and the entire executive staff under federal criminal indictment and state indictment. You know why? Because it's an incitement to commit a crime. You're telling a state, the Tallahassee Police Department, that they have an obligation to break the law to meet your civil requirement. And frankly, Tallahassee Police Department should have said, we're not going to sign a document that forces us to break the law. But they didn't. They agreed. And then gave the excuse to the judge, hey, we didn't have to tell you. We signed a non-disclosure that said we couldn't. Who's higher here? Harris Corporation and their lawyers? Or a judge? The U.S. Marshals swept in here and seized these records from the Sarasota Police Department because they said they had deputized the detective. You got to be flipping kidding me. Ladies and gentlemen, it's like making the rules up as we go. Why are you taking those records? You're a federal agency. This is a state. Well, we have to. Okay, why? Because we deputized Bob there. I mean, you got to be kidding me. Is this a Keystone Cop circus, or is this the United States of America? We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Bergdahl Gitmo release and the implications for the country. I tell you, folks, I got to tell you, we have gone so far over the cliff. I mean, we're not even like the little cartoon creature that just spins there in midair anymore, waiting to fall. We've already fallen. Now we're just waiting for the splat at the bottom. Find us at americasvoicenow.org. You can email me at mike@americasvoicenow. That's mike@americasvoicenow.org. We'll be right back. guys, I got to tell you, Bergdahl's an outrage, but this thing with government snooping and utilizing your cell phone carriers and a direct pipe into them, no oversight from anyone who's supposed to be protecting you, no oversight and protection from the courts. Listen, guys, this is absolute tyranny here. VodaPhone's report is detailed, and it talks about Europe, Africa, Asia. They're calling for a debate on this, but I have to tell you, I exposed to you a couple of weeks ago in another story where the NSA is actually listening, and they admitted now, well, of course it's been exposed, that they are listening, not just getting the metadata, but actually listening to every phone call in 2 countries. One was Afghanistan. Now, a lot of people will say, wow, it's Afghanistan. We're at war with them. What do you care? Rah, 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 rah. First of all, they're at war with you, too. So if you believe that being at war justifies abuse, then you've got your answer. That's why they're listening to you, too. And if you think that they have the ability to track the people in Afghanistan and the individuals in Afghanistan the way they've got the ability to track you, you're dreaming. They don't even have birth certificates and social security numbers over there. Their medical records aren't available for access to be stored, to be later used as an enemy's database list. Are you dumb? The second country was in the Bahamas. Now, when was the last time we saw a Bahamian who came over here with a suicide vest on? It ain't about terror. It's about the DEA, who gave the NSA access to their pipe so that they could capture everything. Every phone call they listened to. Every one. Every phone call, folks. Don't tell me it can't happen. Don't tell me it's not happening. Don't tell me the technology isn't advanced enough. Don't tell me we don't have the computing power for all that. You're full of crap. We not only have the computing power for that, we have the storage capacity for every phone call made. All of it. The NSA came out well over a year ago and admitted that they had, for $300, 300 measly dollars, they could produce and gather everything about you. Because when it's stored as text, ladies and gentlemen, it's compressible beyond comprehension. They can store your entire life for $300. And that was a year and a half ago. And let me tell you something. At the current price of hard drives, the price of this stuff is dropping so rapidly that it's probably down to $150 now. You can get a 3 terabyte drive out there for less than $100. 3 terabytes. Your life is not 3 terabytes in size, trust me. Even if you take all of your medical records, all of your purchase records, all of your banking records, all of your information from what you text and email and write, all your phone calls, convert them to text. They're storable. Even if they weren't and they were just kept in audio format, which is vastly bigger than text. Doesn't matter. And let me tell you something. If they're targeting you, they're doing both. They're converting it to text and storing it away. And then, so they got a transcript of it. And then they're keeping the audio as well, because that way they can utilize the voice inflection and they can use voice printing and they can also voice print whoever you're talking to. Guys, look. There are people who are going to sit there and say, this guy's a conspiracy theorist. This is no conspiracy. They're openly admitting it. If you don't believe the horse when it tells you, yeah, I just ate the apple, I can't help you. When the bank robber admits he robbed the bank, why would you argue with him? All right, this Bergdahl thing is just a... Oh, and by the way, before we get off this thing with the NSA, because And there's an article I posted up on our Facebook page this morning. A judge has ordered the NSA to stop destroying evidence. For the third time! 3 times. 3 times. This judge has ordered the NSA to stop destroying evidence, and they will not. Ladies and gentlemen, they have no respect for a federal judge who's ordered the government to stop destroying national security agency surveillance records that could be used to challenge the legality of the spying programs in court. When a judge has got to say that 3 times, ask yourself. I mean, look, if you were told by a judge, because you were running a business, you're under investigation, and if you destroy any computer records, if you shred any files, you're going to jail, you can bet your bottom dollar you would. They wouldn't even bother with all that. They'd just come in and seize it all. But the NSA, no problem. We'll just keep doing what we want. That judge can go to hell. And they're getting the help of the DOJ to do it. You know, what we're seeing here is a complete and utter and total breakdown of everything that our nation has ever stood for. This thing with Bergdahl releasing these people, I mean, guys, you got the president coming out saying it was a unanimous decision in my government to swap the Taliban, these 5 Taliban terrorists, for Bergdahl. I mean, folks,
on the subject
I'm
of
going to let you hear it
Bergdahl,
yourself.
There is real confusion, and we're hoping you can clear up this one point that arose last night and today.
This is NBC News interviewing President Barack Obama. You're going to hear it right out of the horse's mouth yourself.
What was the reason for not informing the 8 members of Congress who would customarily be informed by this?
Brian, I have to tell you the same thing that I've been saying for the last several days, which is we have a rule, a principle, that when somebody wears our country's uniform and they're in a war theater and they're captured, we're going to do everything we can to bring them home. And we saw an opportunity and we took it. And I make no apologies for it. It was a unanimous decision among my principals in my government.
It was a unanimous decision among my principals and my government? I mean, ladies and gentlemen, is this some kind of a banana dictatorship where you got some guy who sits up there on a throne made out of palm fronds and he's deciding what he can and cannot do? That no laws apply to him? That he's got free and open reign to do as he chooses? A unanimous decision within my government. Well, first of all, he's a brazen, bald-faced liar. How do I know that? Because his own administration, including Panetta, came out and said, I told him not to do it. Hello? His own administration people are belying the fact that this was not a unanimous decision. The intelligence community told him not to do it. The judiciary told him not to do it. The only person who backed him, his play on this, was Dirty Eric Holder. Now he's coming out and saying, well, the Taliban threatened to kill Bergdahl. You know what? I'm so tired of on-the-fly excuses. The Taliban had threatened to kill him. You know what? If that was the truth, they would have said that a long time ago. They wouldn't have waited until, 5-6 days later. Kind of like the argument that, why are you swooping in as a federal government to seize state records on the Stingray issue? Because we deputized Bob. That's your justification? I mean, it sounds like an 8-year-old trying to explain to you why he stole cookies. Well, we had to get him. He was threatened. They were going to kill him. Let me tell you something. They were holding this punk for 5 years. If they were going to kill him, they would have killed him. They wouldn't have wasted the food on him. number one. Number two, you'd negotiated millions of dollars, and they knew exactly how valuable he was. They weren't going to kill him. That's the whole point of a hostage, dummies. You people in the White House think we're all so stupid that this unwashed mass of peasantry can't possibly figure out the truth. Let me tell you something. You just ain't as smart as you think you are. We're not fooled for a minute. They're sitting there telling lawmakers the Taliban threatened to kill Sergeant Bo Bergdahl if the pending deal to free him was made public. Oh, come on. They're making it public. They want it public. Look, the Taliban feeds on public. They want the public to know because they're using you for their own propaganda. They want everybody in the world to know that the mighty United States bowed down and kissed their little sandals. You stupid, stupid, ignorant fools. These are Senate aides that are coming out here. And by the way, there's a bunch of congressional offices that have come out and said the same thing. It's not just limited to one or two. The whole bunch of them were told that. The U.S. obtained credible information that if anything about the swap was public, Bergdahl would be killed. Well, really? Is that why NBC News has got the freed Taliban commander tells relatives he'll fight America again? I am so tired of being lied to by the people that allegedly are supposed to be our leadership and our representatives and our protectors. I can't take much more, folks. What are you not seeing about this that leads you to believe that we can continue on in this frame of mind? What leads you to believe that we can continue on politically, socially, fiscally, economically, industrially, spiritually? Listen, people, this thing has gone so far over the edge. I don't think most Americans realize actually the scope and the depth of the depravity that has become what we construed and believed to be our nation. This is no longer a nation under the rule of law or operating in some format or some manner of quantifiable justification for its actions. You got the president who parades out this kid's father. I mean, look, I've got a son in the military or who was in the military and over in Afghanistan myself. I can imagine the anguish that a father would have felt knowing his son was in the hands of the Taliban. But now they're investigating him because, quite frankly, the guy, went off the deep end himself. And now the kid's refusing to even talk to his parents. He's declined to speak to his family. See, the real problem here, folks, is that we are at the edge between soft tyranny and hard tyranny. That's what this is coming down to. And I'm not sure that most Americans are prepared to deal with the changeover that will occur. It's guaranteed to occur. The question is not if, it's when. We are looking now, and if you don't know the difference between soft tyranny and hard tyranny, go back and read your history. Go look at any totalitarian regime, anywhere in history, but you can start with right here in the 20th century, because we got so much of it, so many examples of it that are current and fresh with common theme of technology and capabilities, and totalitarianists and statists who've run and ruined their own nations under fascism and totalitarianism, listen, they would only dream about having the capabilities that these people have, about having the propaganda machine that these people have. They could only dream about it. So whatever you read, however long it takes you to gather the concept that this can happen overnight here, it's already happening. Listen, everybody points to Stalin and Mao and Hitler, right? Okay, great. But there are plenty of other instances of other regimes that have done the same thing. I mean, you don't have to look that far, and you don't have to see that kind of scale to see it happen over and over and over. Look at Sarajevo. Do you know Sarajevo, just before the war over there in Kosovo, just before, it was the jewel of the ex-Eastern Bloc countries. In fact, they had the Olympics there. It was a beautiful, magnificent city. In a matter of literally 2 years, it went from a beautiful, iconic city full of high technology and culture and museums and stores it looked like Beirut. You had snipers sitting up in the building shooting at women when they were trying to walk over to get a loaf of bread to feed their kids. People couldn't go to work for fear of being assassinated in the street by their fellow countrymen. All over, it was genocide and ethnic and religious issues. But it doesn't matter what the issue is. You see, all of those issues are nothing more than excuses for totalitarian power grabs. That's all it is. It has nothing to do with anything else. That's why Islam is not a religion. It's a political system hidden behind the facade of a religion so that it has justification for its existence. And we've made a religion of government. This is a religion for these treasonous tyrants. It's a religion of government. The environmentalists, perfect example. They're the acolytes who line up there and march forward with the candle chanting, "Save the world. We will save the world." Save the world from what? The greatest risk to humanity on this planet is not some guy sitting there driving to work. The greatest risk to humanity on this planet is the governments that have killed 262 million people in just the last century alone. The same people who say that a sustainable population in the planet now is 1 billion to 1.5 billion, and that means that somewhere between 5.5 and 6 billion of us are excess. You gotta be kidding me. Don't you see that? You see, the implication of this Bergdahl thing, this is just a blip on the radar screen. And frankly, to our fighting men and women, it's a slap in the face. But ultimately, it's a pimple on the elephant's butt. Because this is just another of a stunning level of symptomatic abuses that are going on in every aspect, in every area of our nation. The Iranian leaders are standing out there celebrating, stating that the U.S. has given up, that we've quit. They were watching what they're doing here. It's not just the Taliban. You get Susan Rice coming out there. Our leadership is unmatched. What? I mean, this is beyond insane. Listen, would you, I'm just going to put it real straight. Would you sit in a room and listen to someone tell you that someone that the world, openly despises and is disgusted by. You can pick who it is. You could pick somebody who's a mass murderer, right? Let's say, what's that guy's name down in Florida there? Bundy, the heck is his name? He was a mass murderer. Or Charles Manson or somebody like that. Or this guy Gosnell, who was, running this abortion horror movie scene. I mean, would you sit in a room with someone who was sitting there with a group of people at a table who were all sitting there trying to defend that person? I mean, who would sit there in their right mind and try to defend Jeffrey Dahmer and say, he's a good man, he's unmatched in his... What? Who would sit there and try to defend Adolf Hitler? He was a good man. He was unmatched in his leadership. We have unmatched leadership in Adolf Hitler. Are you out of your flippin' mind? We have unmatched leadership in Joseph Stalin. Doesn't matter that he killed 50 million people. Starved them to death. It's insane to listen to people like that. Why would you subject yourself to that? That's indoctrination. You got Susan Rice standing out there. I mean, look, this woman has so little credibility. I mean, I don't know how she goes home at night and I mean, I can only imagine what the conversation must be like when she gets home. And her husband says, "Hey, honey, how was your day?" I mean, it's almost like a sitcom. Well, I lied to America again. I told them another bald-faced lie. I gave myself a reputation as a person who could lie about what the color of the sky is when they're standing outside with me. You got John Kerry sitting out there telling us that Assad's reelection, is completely, that he's dismissing the legitimacy of it, saying it has no. Listen, there is nothing that comes from the mouths of these people. Nothing that you can trust or hang your hat on or believe in. It is all lies, abuse, and it's tyranny. And if they would lie to you about the most inconsequential things, then what makes you think they're telling you the truth about the big stuff? The NSA spying scandals, the IRS, the Fast and Furious, Benghazi. Or what they're really doing with Iran on the nuclear weapon. I mean, what is Barack Obama just admitting, or not admitting, but is he really planning to give Iran the bomb? I read an article the other day from a guy who I consider an alarmist, and he made the argument that the goal of the United States right now is that they think they can win a first strike nuclear war against Russia and China. And that's what they're gearing up for. Based on the fact that we've got these, missile defense systems that can theoretically catch their ICBMs as they fling them back. Now, I consider this guy to be a bit of an alarmist generally, but, when you look at their previous activity, you can almost say maybe they are thinking something that insane. Because there's nothing about these people that gives them any credibility whatsoever. There's no reason or ration. All right, we're going to wrap for the day. Get a chance to swing over and see Pizza Hut here in Porter Wagoner Boulevard, but across the country. You have an opportunity to get into Pizza Hut and take advantage of their great lunch specials. on Tuesdays and Thursdays, where lunch is reduced to price to $5, and then on Tuesday evening, where kids under 12 eat free. See our friends at Battery Station at batterystation.com. Visit AmericanResumeService.com. Make sure that when you join up there, you you take advantage of their $200 half price, so it's a $100 resume service program, and then they donate that whole $100 to America's Voice Now. See our friends at AtlasSurvivalShelters.com, SurvivalByPreparedness.com, and SpringCreekBeef.com for all natural grass-fed beef. We'll see you tomorrow morning. God bless.